The Amazon does not reveal its secrets loudly. It does not shout like the desert winds of Egypt or strike or like the towering stone ruins of Rome. Instead, it hums, a low, breathing murmur of life so constant that it becomes almost hypnotic. Imagine standing beneath its canopy at night. The air is thick enough to taste, humid, warm, scented with damp earth and unseen flowers. Leaves shift though there is no breeze. Creatures move just beyond sight. Every sound is both soft and immense, chirps layered over croaks, distant howls echoing like ghosts through the dripping vines. It is not silence, but it is not chaos either. It is a living rhythm. A heartbeat. A pulse that predates empires. Most travelers feel small when they enter this realm. Some feel humbled. Others feel watched. As if the forest itself possesses memory. As if it has seen things far older than the world civilizations cling to. You might think you are alone as you walk beneath arching roots and moss-laden trunks, but the jungle makes you feel observed, not by animals, but by something ancient. Something that waits. Something that remembers. Most people dismiss such sensations as tricks of imagination. But what if that feeling is truth? What if the Amazon is not untouched wilderness as we were taught, but a graveyard of greatness, overgrown and silent? For centuries, explorers, scholars, and armchair historians alike believed this rainforest to be too wild, too infertile, too unforgiving to host complex life beyond scattered tribes. They saw mud. They saw chaos. They saw danger. They assumed no civilization could thrive here. They imagined these endless trees stretching back into eternity, unchanged since the dawn of time. But the forest whispers otherwise. Its roots twist over shapes too straight to be natural. Its hills rise in patterns too intentional. Its floor conceals black soil too fertile to occur by chance. There are scars in its greenery, subtle, almost invisible, that are not the marks of time, but of design. Yet to understand the Amazon, one must first surrender the arrogance of assumption. This is not a place that reveals itself to those who demand answers. It rewards quiet listening. It responds to patience. Stand still long enough, and the vines begin to resemble walls. The clearings take the shape of plazas. The strangler figs curl like forgotten pillars. Close your eyes, and the insects chanting in the darkness become drums. The rustling above turns to footsteps. A river gushing nearby becomes the roar of a gathering crowd. Past and present blur until you cannot tell if what you hear belongs to now, or to 1,000 years ago. Picture a clearing lit only by moonlight filtered through leaves. The ground beneath you is soft, yet uneven. A mound here. A trench there. You think nothing of it until you look closely. Straight lines. Repeating angles. Traces of something crafted by hands long gone. Rainwater gathers in geometric pools instead of natural puddles. The trees grow in strange alignments, as if once, long ago, they were planted deliberately. The jungle is trying to tell you something. It speaks not in words, but in shapes and shadows. Most people walk past this language without noticing. They see roots, not roads. They see bushes, not borders. But to those who know how to read the land, the truth becomes undeniable. This forest was not always wild. It was once organized. Structured. Tended. Imagine lanterns flickering along earthen pathways now smothered by moss. Imagine children laughing where now only frogs croak. Imagine watchtowers built from timber towering over rivers that today flow undisturbed. Imagine a world where this jungle was not a barrier, but a home. The modern world loves certainty, and so it dismisses what it cannot immediately prove. But the Amazon laughs at certainty. It hides its relics beneath layers of life. Stone crumbles fast here. Metal rusts to dust. Bones dissolve into soil. Give this jungle a century, and it will erase a city so thoroughly that even memory struggles to recall it. Give it a millennium, and only silence remains. But silence is not absence. Silence is waiting. Waiting for those who can listen. Long before cities like London or Paris lit their first fires, there may have been light in this jungle. Fires burning in great circles. Voices chanting in languages now extinct. Dances beneath towering wooden temples. Council gatherings beneath the moon. But history forgot them. Or perhaps history never truly knew them to begin with. What remains today are hints, whispers, shadows beneath roots. You may walk through the forest and think it is eternal. But no forest is eternal. Every tree has a birthplace. Every river once had a diversion. Every clearing once had a purpose. The Amazon is not a random sprawl of green, it is a palimpsest, an ancient manuscript overwritten with vines and leaves. Beneath the fresh ink of living foliage lies older writing carved into earth and memory. So breathe in the damp air. Let the scents of blooming orchids and decaying bark fill your lungs. Listen not to the noise, but to the patterns within it. The jungle is not merely alive. It is aware. A cathedral without stone. A library without books. A grave without markers. But if you are quiet enough, you may feel it. A question rising from the soil. Not where are the ruins? But what if the ruins are all around you, disguised as nature itself? This is not just a forest. It is a witness. It has observed empires rise and crumble. It has seen strangers arrive in armor, coated in sweat and madness. It has absorbed blood and laughter alike. Now it stands in silence, not because it is empty, but because it remembers too much. It does not need to speak loudly. A whisper is enough. Because once you hear it, you can never unhear it. And so the question is no longer was there a civilization here? The real question is, how vast was it? How powerful? How sophisticated? And most haunting of all, why did history try so hard to bury it? For generations, the world believed the Amazon to be an untouched wilderness, a chaotic and unforgiving tangle of vines, insects, and swampy soil too unstable to build upon, too infertile to farm, and too hostile for complex societies to endure. Scholars, missionaries, and imperial chroniclers alike painted it not as a cradle of civilization, but as a barrier to it. Maps labeled it Green Hell. Explorers wrote of poisonous creatures, diseases that melted the flesh, rivers that swallowed men whole. To the Western imagination, the jungle was not merely unknown, it was unworthy of being known. It was land to be passed through, not land that could ever have sustained greatness. And so the myth took root: the Amazon was empty, because no advanced people could possibly thrive there. The earliest European scientists argued that tropical soils were naturally weak. They observed the constant rain washing away nutrients, leaving behind sand and clay. They declared agriculture impossible. They declared cities unimaginable. To them, civilization required stone, clear skies, and stable earth, qualities the Amazon defiantly rejected. And because these conclusions came wrapped in academic language, they were believed without question. Textbooks repeated them. University lectures reinforced them. For centuries, schoolchildren across continents learned that places like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and China were proper cradles of civilization, while the Amazon was little more than a biological curiosity. They were taught that great cities rise from logic and order, straight roads and sturdy walls. The jungle, with its sprawling unpredictability, did not fit that script. Yet even as scholars dismissed the Amazon as primitive, stories persisted among its people, stories of ancestors not living in scattered huts but in organized communities connected by vast networks. Elders spoke of roads so straight they ran to the horizon. They spoke of plazas so large that celebrations could be heard for miles. They spoke of gardens that never stopped bearing fruit. But because these stories were spoken, not written, they were ignored. Oral history was deemed inferior to ink and paper. Indigenous knowledge was treated as legend rather than legacy. Western explorers, too, once witnessed something extraordinary, but were later told they imagined it. In the 16th century, some conquistadors reported encountering settlements filled with tens of thousands of people. They described fields of maize stretching beyond sight, elevated roads built above the floods, and villages aligned with stunning precision. But these accounts were ridiculed. The writers were accused of exaggeration. Scholars insisted they must have mistaken temporary war gatherings for permanent cities. It was more comfortable to believe they lied than to accept that an advanced culture had flourished where modern logic claimed it could not. The deeper truth was more complicated. European academics were not just skeptical, they were invested in skepticism. To acknowledge a great Amazonian civilization would be to admit that the Western model of progress was not the universal blueprint. It would mean that humanity could achieve complexity not only through metal and stone, but through wood, earth, and ecology. It would challenge the narrative that temperate climates produced rational societies, while tropical ones bred only survivalists. And so the myth of the empty jungle was not born from evidence, it was born from convenience. Over time, this myth hardened into doctrine. It became common sense that the Amazon was conquered by nature, not cultivated by humans. Paintings in European salons depicted the rainforest as wild and savage. Naturalists praised its beauty while declaring it hostile to human ambition. Even sympathetic visitors returned home describing its inhabitants as scattered tribes, noble in their simplicity but incapable of large-scale organization. Some even insisted that the forest itself prevented civilization. They believed that constant growth drowned innovation, that life here existed only in the moment, without past or future. They thought the jungle resisted memory. But the jungle does not resist memory, it simply preserves it differently. Instead of stone monuments, it grows roots over earthworks. Instead of walls, it leaves patterns in the distribution of plants. Instead of written archives, it holds history in the stories whispered between generations. Those who claimed the Amazon was empty were not seeing emptiness. They were seeing erasure. They were witnessing the aftereffect of catastrophe, the void left when millions vanished suddenly, leaving behind only trees to tell their story. Yet the myth persisted because it was comfortable. If the Amazon had always been untouched wilderness, then colonization could be framed not as invasion but as discovery. If its people had always lived in small groups, then conquest could be seen as inevitable rather than disruptive. If civilization had never existed here, then nothing had been lost. The lie was convenient. And so it was repeated. Even modern documentaries sometimes echo this outdated view, romanticizing the jungle as nature's last untouched frontier, as though humans were never part of it. They speak of biodiversity, but not of urban planning. They praise sustainability, yet ignore the hands that once shaped this landscape intentionally. They see abundance, but not architecture. They see forest, but not foundation. But cracks in the myth began to appear. In the late 20th century, archaeologists started noticing strange geometries hidden beneath satellite imagery. They found mound formations aligned too perfectly to be random. They uncovered ditches forming massive circles stretching for kilometers, not for defense, but perhaps for ceremony. These were not the works of scattered tribes. They were signatures of coordination, of engineering. Still, denial persisted. Scholars argued these structures were incidental, perhaps caused by animal patterns or natural erosion. But then came evidence too dense to dismiss. Black soil, richer than anything naturally occurring, appeared in patches across the basin, terra preta, engineered by hands that understood chemistry far beyond what outsiders believed possible. Rivers were found subtly altered. Tree species were distributed not randomly, but in patterns consistent with orchard placement. The forest itself was beginning to speak in unmistakable language. The myth of the empty jungle began to tremble. Yet even as new discoveries emerged, a strange resistance remained. Why was it so hard to let go of the old narrative? Perhaps because the new one required humility. It required the modern world to accept that civilization need not be carved from stone to be advanced. It required us to admit that progress does not always look like towers and steel. Sometimes it looks like harmony, an empire so perfectly woven into its environment that, when gone, the world simply reveals itself over the memory. Now, standing at the edge of revelation, we must confront the truth. The Amazon was never empty. It was never wild in the way outsiders imagined. It was alive with intention. It was cultivated. It was designed. The only reason we mistook it for wilderness is because its architects built not to dominate nature, but to blend with it so seamlessly that time itself could not separate them. The myth of the empty jungle is dying. And in its place, something magnificent is rising, a vision not of scattered tribes surviving at nature's mercy, but of a grand civilization thriving through wisdom, patience, and ecological brilliance. The forest is not a frontier. It is a memory. And that memory is waking. In the year 1542, a Spanish explorer named Francisco de Orellana set out on a journey that would become one of the most astonishing and controversial tales in history. He and his companions navigated the twisting arteries of the Amazon River, expecting to map unknown lands and find small villages of indigenous people. What he discovered, however, was unlike anything he, or the world, had ever imagined. His journals spoke of massive settlements, streets wide enough for dozens of people to walk side by side, plazas filled with children and elders, and temples that rose above the treetops. He described markets overflowing with food, craft, and tools. And then there were the warriors, disciplined and numerous, marching in formation along raised paths that seemed to stretch endlessly. To Orellana, it was a civilization so vast it made European cities feel like villages. When he returned to Spain, Orellana told his story with fervent urgency. He claimed the jungle was alive with cities that rivaled Seville or Toledo in size and sophistication. He spoke of a land glittering with wealth, not just gold, but knowledge, agriculture, and social organization. Yet the reception he received was cold, skeptical, and even mocking. His accounts were labeled as exaggerations, fantasies born of fevered imagination or the excess of alcohol during long nights in the forest. No European mind could accept that such a civilization could exist in a place so maligned as the Amazon. And so, his words were dismissed, filed away alongside tales of monsters and mythical rivers. The notion of the Golden Phantom was born, a civilization that seemed to vanish into thin air. Orellana's contemporaries reasoned that perhaps he had mistaken the movements of nomadic tribes for cities, or that he had misinterpreted temporary fortifications as permanent settlements. After all, in Europe, great cities were built of stone and mortar, not of earthworks and wood, which could decay or be reclaimed by nature within a few decades. The forest had swallowed Orellana's truth before it could be properly recognized. And yet, if we read between the lines of his descriptions, we sense the reality behind the myth. His words pulse with detail, with observation, with the unmistakable weight of first-hand witness. The phantom was real, but the world was unready to see it. Orellana was not alone in his reports. Other explorers, following his path, encountered evidence of the same astonishing civilization. They noted organized settlements along the riverbanks, roads that connected distant communities, and terraces cut into hillsides that hinted at sophisticated agricultural planning. Many wrote of ceremonial sites marked with geometric precision, of communal houses large enough to accommodate dozens, and of waterways engineered to manage floods. But, once again, disbelief overshadowed observation. The European imagination simply could not reconcile the existence of advanced society within a rainforest so vast, so chaotic, and so seemingly inhospitable. What makes Orellana's account so striking is not just the scale he described, but the subtlety with which he captured it. Unlike other conquistadors, he did not focus solely on treasures of gold or silver. He described systems, communities, and infrastructure. He noticed patterns in agriculture, the distribution of villages, and even methods of irrigation. In doing so, he provided hints that the Amazon was not merely a scattering of tribes, but a network of organized, intelligent, and highly adaptive communities. To modernize, his observations prefigure what satellites and lidar scans would reveal centuries later: geometric earthworks, planned settlements, and remnants of civilization concealed by the forest's relentless growth. Yet the Golden Phantom faded from history for another reason: conquest and disease. The very Europeans who dismissed Orellana's testimony would, in the years to come, bring smallpox, influenza, and other foreign pathogens into the region, wiping out large populations before they could recover. Forests reclaimed abandoned settlements, erasing roads, buildings, and temples. The scale of the civilization Orellana described was no longer visible. Future explorers found only hints: mounds, ditches, occasional pottery shards, insufficient for the world to challenge centuries of skepticism. Even the stories of surviving indigenous peoples were often ignored or mistrusted. Some tribes remembered ancestors who spoke of vast cities, elaborate irrigation systems, and ceremonial centers larger than any European town. Their oral histories, painstakingly preserved over generations, seemed fantastical to outsiders. The collective memory of the Amazon's lost civilization clashed with the European insistence on empirical proof and visible permanence. And so, the world continued to believe that the Amazon was empty, wild, and untamed. Despite centuries of dismissal, Orellana's journey planted seeds of truth. His observations hinted at what modern archaeologists would begin to uncover: geometric earthworks stretching for kilometers, roads elevated above floodplains, and settlements carefully adapted to their environment. In his journals, there are glimpses of a society that had achieved balance between human life and the relentless growth of the forest, a civilization both impressive and ephemeral. The forest may have swallowed it, but the echoes remained. The story of the Golden Phantom is not simply a tale of lost cities. It is a meditation on human perception, belief, and the limits of imagination. Orellana's journey challenges the assumption that greatness must resemble what we know, that civilization must be monumental in stone or steel. The Amazon reminds us that brilliance can exist quietly, intricately, and harmoniously with nature. His narrative bridges centuries, a whisper of truth traveling through disbelief, waiting for a future that could finally understand it. And so we return to the present, standing at the edge of rediscovery. The Amazon is no longer a phantom in myth alone. Through the lens of modern science, the shadows Orellana glimpsed become tangible. Earthworks emerge from under the canopy. Roads appear where none were believed to exist. And slowly, the ghostly civilizations he described begin to take shape in our understanding, a lost empire that was never truly forgotten, only waiting for someone patient enough to listen to the whispers of the jungle. The Amazon does not negotiate with time. Unlike the stone cities of Rome or the pyramids of Egypt, it allows no monument to stand unchallenged. In the dense, humid expanse of this rainforest, the very air conspires with growth and decay to erase traces of human endeavor. One can imagine a thriving settlement, its wooden houses aligned in rows, its plazas busy with the rhythms of daily life. And yet, in a matter of decades, vines creep over walls, roots pry apart foundations, and moss covers ceremonial grounds. The jungle is patient. It does not rush. It swallows slowly, methodically, until nothing recognizable remains. To stand within it is to feel the impermanence of ambition, the quiet triumph of nature over human hands. This is not a jungle that merely consumes ruins, it consumes memory. Empires rise in the open world, leaving stone and metal to mark their existence. They demand recognition, they leave artifacts in museums, inscriptions in libraries, architecture that survives centuries. The Amazon, however, has perfected the art of erasure. It erases not only the physical evidence but also the narrative. Without written records or enduring monuments, the achievements of its people were easily dismissed as fantasy. Where other civilizations boast visibility and permanence, the Amazon demonstrates that sophistication need not shout to be profound. Its genius is hidden, embedded in the earth, the rivers, and the canopy above. Consider the sheer scale of what might have been lost. From aerial surveys and satellite imagery, archaeologists now estimate that settlements once spread across hundreds of kilometers. Roads linked distant communities. Circular plazas suggest gathering places for thousands. Elevated terraces hint at sophisticated agriculture. These were not isolated villages but organized networks capable of sustaining immense populations. Yet today, walking through the forest, one sees nothing. The evidence is invisible to the casual eye. Where once laughter and song resonated, only the calls of birds and the hum of insects remain. The Amazon demonstrates a paradox. Human ambition can be vast and ingenious, and yet, without durable materials, it can vanish almost entirely. Disease and conquest played their roles in this erasure, but the jungle itself was the ultimate agent. Floods washed away clay and timber. Roots expanded like living hammers, cracking walls and filling trenches. Fires occasionally swept through settlements, leaving only faint ash and blackened soil. Organic materials, the mainstay of construction and daily life, decayed rapidly in the humid air. Unlike stone monuments, which stand for centuries, these structures were ephemeral, fragile against the relentless persistence of nature. It is a remarkable thought. A civilization could be technologically advanced, socially complex, and ecologically harmonious, and still leave almost no trace behind. Yet even as the forest devours, it preserves in its own way. Subtle patterns in vegetation, alignments of certain trees, and variations in soil composition all hint at human intervention. Terra preta, the black fertile soil, is the most striking example, a product of careful, deliberate management, persisting for centuries. The jungle, in its quiet way, safeguards knowledge, hiding it in plain sight. Modern explorers and scientists have only begun to decipher these clues, peeling back the layers to reveal the vast networks that once thrived beneath the canopy. The jungle's appetite is not indiscriminate. It does not obliterate every sign of human activity immediately, nor does it render all evidence meaningless. It merely transforms it, weaving human achievement into its own intricate fabric. The forest teaches an enduring lesson: permanence is not guaranteed, no matter the scale of human endeavor. The great civilizations of Europe, Africa, and Asia may leave stones behind, but in the Amazon, the measure of ingenuity is subtlety and adaptation rather than visibility. Structures built with respect for the environment last longer in harmony with nature, but even they eventually yield to growth and decay. Walk through the forest and imagine an entire city being absorbed. Roads become invisible under leaf litter. Mounds once sculpted for ceremonial purposes are softened by centuries of rain. The river's course shifts, erasing docks and canals. Insects, fungi, and bacteria recycle every trace of human presence into fertile soil. The forest is both destructor and recycler, a force that consumes empires while nurturing the seeds of future growth. There is poetry in this, a meditation on impermanence, reminding us that the grandeur of human effort is never guaranteed a lasting home. The story of the Amazon challenges our assumptions about civilization itself. It forces a reconsideration of what it means to leave a legacy. Perhaps permanence is not measured in stone and steel but in ecological wisdom, in the careful shaping of landscapes to sustain life. The Amazonian city builders did not seek to conquer their environment, they sought to live within it. Their cities may have vanished from view, yet the mark of their genius lingers in the soil, in the trees, and in the subtle geometry of the forest. It is a reminder that history is often written not by those who leave monuments, but by those who endure invisibly through harmony with nature. Empires rise and fall, but the jungle persists. In this way, the Amazon is both adversary and protector, erasing human ambition yet preserving its essence in ways that only the patient and observant can perceive. Standing amidst the towering trees, one cannot help but feel humility and wonder. The forest teaches that survival and success are not merely about dominance, but about balance, ingenuity, and adaptation. The Amazon eats empires, but in doing so, it also conceals their genius, waiting for a future that has the patience and vision to uncover it. It is this duality that makes the Amazon both fearsome and fascinating. It is a place where human achievement can be magnificent, yet fleeting. Where civilizations can rise, flourish, and vanish without a trace. And yet, in its silence, the forest whispers, greatness once existed here. It was grand, intricate, and extraordinary. And though the jungle has consumed it, it has not obliterated the memory entirely. Only those who listen carefully, truly attentively, can begin to perceive the outlines of empires that time and nature have conspired to hide. Long before the first European explorer ventured into the heart of the Amazon, its rivers and forests were alive with organized human activity. The Amazonian city builders were not simple tribes eking out a precarious existence. They were architects, planners, and engineers who reshaped the landscape to sustain vast populations. Their settlements were meticulously arranged, following patterns that harmonized with the topography, the waterways, and the rhythms of the seasons. Straight roads connected distant communities, while plazas served as centers of social and spiritual life. Raised platforms protected dwellings from seasonal floods, and terraces carved into hillsides maximized agricultural potential. These societies demonstrated an understanding of spatial organization and environmental management that rivaled any civilization known in Europe at the time. What makes their achievement even more remarkable is the scale at which they operated. LiDAR scans and satellite imagery now reveal networks stretching hundreds of kilometers, indicating coordinated planning across vast territories. Circular and rectangular plazas hint at communal decision-making and ceremonial practices, suggesting a complex social hierarchy. Roads, often elevated to remain above floodwaters, were engineered with precision, linking clusters of settlements into cohesive networks. The layout was not arbitrary. Every mound, ditch, and terrace was placed deliberately, reflecting a sophisticated knowledge of hydrology, agriculture, and urban planning. These were cities built not for conquest, but for sustainability, designed to flourish in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. The Amazonian city builders understood the interplay between human activity and the natural world. They cultivated forests strategically, planting fruit trees and other edible species to support growing populations. Gardens and orchards were integrated seamlessly with the surrounding ecosystem, enhancing soil fertility and ensuring a continuous food supply. The creation of terra preta, fertile black earth, reflects deliberate ecological engineering, a technique that improved crop yields and allowed communities to thrive in regions that would otherwise be inhospitable. They were not conquerors of the forest, they were collaborators with it, shaping their environment in ways that would sustain life for generations. Ceremonial life played a central role in these settlements. Plazas, often the largest structures within a community, were likely venues for gatherings, celebrations, and spiritual rites. Mounds and terraces provided elevated stages or platforms, while geometric patterns suggest alignment with celestial or seasonal events. Artifacts found in these areas hint at a rich cultural life, including pottery, carvings, and ceremonial tools. These societies were not only practical but also expressive, integrating artistry and ritual into the fabric of daily life. The Amazonian city builders created spaces that were both functional and symbolic, reflecting a worldview in which human society and nature were deeply intertwined. The scale and sophistication of these settlements challenged the long-held assumption that the Amazon could not support large populations. Historical estimates now suggest that millions may have lived in these networks, far more than early explorers or scholars ever imagined. The cities were dynamic, adapting to environmental changes and maintaining harmony with the forest. Seasonal flooding was mitigated through terracing and raised pathways, while food security was enhanced through carefully planned agriculture and the propagation of fruit trees and other useful plants. In essence, these communities were masterpieces of ecological urbanism, demonstrating foresight and ingenuity that rivaled civilizations elsewhere in the world. Despite the rainforest's eventual reclamation of many of these sites, their ingenuity persists in subtle ways. The distribution of tree species, soil composition, and the remnants of earthworks all testify to a civilization that understood balance and sustainability. Their cities may have disappeared from view, but they have left an indelible imprint on the land. By studying these traces, modern archaeologists are beginning to reconstruct the life and organization of societies that were once thought impossible. These discoveries rewrite the narrative of human achievement, revealing a civilization that thrived without the need for stone walls or metal fortifications, relying instead on knowledge, cooperation, and an intimate relationship with the environment. The rise of the Amazonian city builders is a story of vision, adaptation, and quiet grandeur. Their accomplishments were not meant to dominate or intimidate, they were intended to endure, to coexist with the rhythms of the forest. Roads and plazas, mounds and terraces, all were manifestations of intelligence applied to survival, beauty, and community. Unlike empires that sought immortality through monuments, these cities achieved greatness through subtlety, ecological harmony, and social cohesion. Their legacy is not easily seen, but it is profound. A civilization that mastered both the art of living and the wisdom of respecting the natural world. As we trace their roads from above, or carefully examine the alignments of their earthworks, it becomes clear that the Amazon was once a vibrant tapestry of human ingenuity. Every mound, every pathway, every clearing reflects thoughtful planning and collective effort. These were societies that understood the consequences of their actions, shaping the land to sustain life, not to exhaust it. They were the architects of a civilization whose sophistication rivaled any in human history, yet whose methods remain largely invisible to the untrained eye. In the quiet spaces of the rainforest, the legacy of the Amazonian city builders whispers still, reminding us that the greatest achievements are not always the loudest, the tallest, or the most obvious. they are those that endure in balance with the world around them. The story of their rise is a lesson in humility and wonder. It challenges modern assumptions about what human societies can achieve in harmony with nature. It demonstrates that intelligence is not measured by conquest or stone, but by adaptability, foresight, and the capacity to create life-sustaining networks within a challenging environment. The Amazonian city builders were masters of this subtle, enduring art, leaving behind a civilization that, though largely hidden beneath the forest canopy, continues to shape our understanding of human potential. The Amazonian civilization was not only remarkable for its cities and roads, it was extraordinary in its mastery over the very earth beneath their feet. One of their most astonishing achievements was terra preta, or black earth, a soil so fertile that it continues to baffle scientists today. Unlike the thin, nutrient-poor soils typical of the rainforest, terra preta could sustain intensive agriculture year after year. It was no accident, it was deliberately engineered. By combining charcoal, organic waste, and human labor, these ancient engineers created patches of land that produced extraordinary yields, ensuring the survival and growth of densely populated communities. This soil was not just a technical innovation, it was a testament to deep ecological understanding and foresight. Imagine standing in one of these plots centuries ago. The ground beneath your feet would be dark, rich, and teeming with life. Crops would flourish in straight rows, producing far more food than neighboring unfertilized areas. The careful layering of nutrients, combined with charcoal's ability to retain carbon and water, created a resilient agricultural system capable of withstanding droughts and floods alike. This was sophisticated science, long before modern chemistry and soil science. Every handful of dirt was a product of deliberate design, an enduring signature of a civilization that understood that mastery over nature did not mean domination, it meant collaboration. But their ingenuity extended beyond the soil. These people shaped the forest itself. They planted fruit trees and useful species in patterns that created semi-managed orchards within the wilderness. Unlike monocultures in modern agriculture, these forests were diverse and self-sustaining, enhancing biodiversity while providing consistent nourishment. The engineers of the Amazon did not clear-cut the land for farming. They guided its growth, sculpted it, and wove human life into the ecosystem rather than against it. In this way, the forest became both a source of sustenance and a protective canopy over their cities, blending natural and human design into a single, living system. Water management was another area of their brilliance. Settlements were often built near rivers and streams, yet engineered to avoid the devastating floods that could easily destroy unprepared communities. Raised platforms, canals, and ditches controlled water flow, while terraces and embankments allowed cultivation in areas that might otherwise have been submerged. The city builders understood the rhythms of rain and river, integrating them into a design that balanced safety, productivity, and efficiency. Floods were not disasters, they were anticipated, managed, and used to enrich the soil. In this, they achieved a harmony between human settlement and the unpredictable forces of nature that few modern engineers can replicate. Their knowledge was not limited to immediate survival. The Amazonian engineers thought long-term, creating systems that improved over decades and centuries. Terra preta, for instance, did not merely enhance crop yields temporarily, it transformed the ecological potential of the land, allowing settlements to persist in places that would have been uninhabitable without intervention. Trees and plants were deliberately propagated to support food security, medicine, and construction needs. This was a civilization that planned not for the next season, but for generations yet to come, embedding resilience and foresight into every aspect of their environment. Even architecture reflected this synergy with nature. Buildings were constructed from wood and other organic materials that blended with the landscape, elevated to avoid floods yet integrated with surrounding trees. Plazas and ceremonial spaces were aligned with natural features, rivers, hills, and even celestial movements, suggesting a profound understanding of geometry, astronomy, and environmental harmony. The engineers of the Amazon were not only practical, they were visionary, designing spaces that were functional, symbolic, and enduring in a rainforest that could erase less thoughtful constructions in decades. The evidence of this civilization's ingenuity is subtle, often overlooked by those who search only for stone monuments. Yet beneath the canopy, the landscape is a complex palimpsest of human activity. Linear mounds, circular earthworks, and strategically placed orchards all point to deliberate, large-scale planning. This civilization engineered an entire ecosystem, balancing human needs with the forest's natural processes. Their cities were living, breathing systems, and even today, modern scientists are only beginning to understand the sophistication of their designs. The brilliance of the Amazonian engineers is a testament to human adaptability and creativity. They demonstrate that intelligence is not measured solely by monuments or weaponry, but by the capacity to sustain life in harmony with a challenging environment. Terra Preta and the orchestrated forests of the Amazon are more than historical curiosities. They are enduring proof that humans can shape nature in ways that benefit both people and the ecosystem simultaneously. These engineers understood cycles of growth and decay, balance and replenishment, and they left a legacy that continues to nourish the land centuries after the cities themselves have disappeared. Standing in the modern Amazon, one can almost feel the echoes of their ingenuity. Every fertile patch of soil, every carefully aligned tree, and every subtle pattern in the forest is a whisper of intelligence from the past. The engineers of soil and sky remind us that true mastery is not domination but understanding, not destruction but co-creation. And in the quiet, fertile dark beneath the canopy, their genius endures, patiently waiting for those who are willing to see it, to study it, and to marvel at a civilization that mastered the art of living with, rather than against, the world around them. Step into the heart of the Amazon, and it is easy to be deceived. The forest appears wild, chaotic, and impenetrable, stretching endlessly with no hint of order. Yet beneath this apparent wilderness lies a hidden truth. The Amazon was never entirely untamed. It was, in many ways, a carefully designed and cultivated landscape, a garden of astonishing scale, shaped by the hands of a civilization whose ingenuity rivaled any known in human history. The trees, the plants, the waterways, and even the soil were orchestrated to serve human needs while maintaining ecological balance. What seems natural is in fact a masterpiece of subtle engineering, a living testament to a people who understood that civilization could thrive without destroying the world that nurtured it. Archaeologists and ecologists working in the Amazon today are uncovering startling patterns. Certain species of fruit trees, for example, are distributed across the forest in ways that could not have occurred by chance. These trees appear in regular intervals, often near settlements, suggesting deliberate planting to ensure food security. Cassava, Brazil nuts, and other staple crops were cultivated alongside native species, forming self-sustaining networks of nourishment. The forest was not a random sprawl but a dynamic system, a blend of human intention and natural growth. Trails and roads that are invisible to the naked eye become clear under satellite imagery and lidar scans, revealing the geometric precision of a landscape that was planned with sophistication and care. This cultivated forest served multiple purposes. Beyond providing food, it protected the people who lived within it. The arrangement of trees and plants could act as natural barriers, guiding movement, sheltering settlements from floods, and even controlling the spread of pests. By blending human activity seamlessly with the forest ecosystem, the Amazonian gardeners created resilience. Their settlements were never isolated from nature, they were integrated into it. Agriculture, forestry, and habitation existed in harmony, demonstrating a level of ecological intelligence that modern societies are only beginning to rediscover. The forest's design also extended to water management. Rivers, streams, and seasonal floodplains were carefully harnessed. Elevated terraces and raised pathways protected settlements from inundation while guiding water to nourish fields. Canals and channels helped to distribute water evenly, preventing stagnation and ensuring fertile soil. Where the modern observer might see an untamed riverbank, the Amazonian engineers saw irrigation, flood control, and connectivity. Their gardening was not merely aesthetic or practical, it was an entire philosophy of sustainable urban planning, applied over vast distances and countless generations. The scale of their orchestration is astonishing. Entire regions of the Amazon, once thought to be wild, are now recognized as anthropogenic landscapes, shaped by centuries of careful cultivation. Geoglyphs, geometric earthworks visible from above, hint at ceremonial, social, and agricultural organization, suggesting that even large-scale planning could coexist with environmental stewardship. These were not temporary measures but long-term strategies designed to support dense populations over centuries. The forest itself became both a tool and a companion, its resources curated and its patterns respected. Even the biodiversity of the Amazon was not purely incidental. Species useful to humans, edible palms, medicinal plants, timber, were encouraged, propagated, and strategically planted. Certain areas were thinned to allow sunlight to reach productive crops, while others were left intact to maintain ecosystem balance. In effect, the forest functioned as a living farm, carefully designed to provide maximum sustenance without depleting its own resources. This demonstrates a level of foresight and environmental understanding that exceeds that of many modern agricultural systems. Consider the implications. A civilization capable of designing a garden of this magnitude did not merely survive, it flourished. Cities could support thousands of inhabitants because the surrounding forest was both pantry and shield, orchard and pharmacy. The landscape itself became an extension of social, economic, and spiritual life, integrated into the rhythm of human existence. Villages, roads, and ceremonial spaces were woven seamlessly into this forest garden, creating a landscape that was productive, resilient, and beautiful. The ingenuity of the Amazonian gardeners challenges our assumptions about human-environment interaction. Today, many regard the forest as pristine wilderness, untouched by human hands. In reality, it is a palimpsest, a living manuscript of ecological engineering. Each tree, each clearing, and each fertile plot is a line written by ancient hands, a message preserved across centuries, waiting to be read by those who look carefully. The forest that appears wild to the casual eye is, in fact, a carefully cultivated environment designed to support human life without destroying it. Walking through this forest, one senses the harmony that once existed between people and nature. There is rhythm in the placement of plants, symmetry in the arrangement of groves, and continuity in the patterns that stretch across the landscape. The Amazonian civilization understood that true permanence comes not from domination, but from collaboration. The forest was both canvas and collaborator, a partner in sustaining life and culture. Their garden was not merely productive, it was an enduring statement of intelligence, patience, and respect for the living world. In the quiet of the rainforest, it is possible to feel the echoes of this ancient design. Birds, insects, and mammals move through spaces once deliberately shaped for human use, unaware of the history embedded beneath their feet. Soil that nourished generations continues to do so, a legacy of careful cultivation that transcends centuries. Paths may have faded, plazas may be overgrown, and mounds may be softened by rain, yet the garden endures in subtle patterns that reveal themselves to those who seek them. The forest that was a garden reminds us that human ingenuity can coexist with nature on a vast, sustainable scale. It challenges the myth of the untouched wilderness and reveals the Amazon not as an obstacle to civilization, but as a testament to the intelligence and foresight of those who once shaped it. In its quiet order and enduring productivity, the Amazon teaches that the greatest civilizations are those that respect and collaborate with the world around them, leaving behind legacies that survive not in stone, but in life itself. Imagine walking through the Amazon today. The forest is dense, humid, and seemingly endless. Yet beneath the thick canopy lie remnants of a civilization that connected its settlements across vast distances with remarkable precision. Straight lines cut through the wilderness, roads raised above the floodplains, some stretching for tens of kilometers, linking villages, plazas, and ceremonial centers. These were not crude trails forged out of necessity. They were engineered, carefully constructed pathways designed for durability and functionality. The very existence of these roads challenges centuries of assumptions that the Amazon was impenetrable and inhospitable. They speak to a society with sophisticated planning, coordination, and logistical understanding, capable of uniting communities across an immense and challenging environment. Early European explorers seldom understood what they encountered. To them, the forest appeared chaotic, with no discernible order. When they stumbled upon these pathways, they often dismissed them as natural features or minor tracks used by animals. Only recently, with modern tools like LiDAR, have archaeologists begun to trace the full extent of these roads, revealing networks that suggest thousands of inhabitants moving seamlessly across hundreds of kilometers. These thoroughfares were the lifelines of civilization, allowing the transport of goods, ideas, and cultural practices between settlements. They were not merely functional, they were arteries of social cohesion, uniting a civilization whose scale had long been underestimated. Construction of these roads required advanced engineering. Many were elevated above the surrounding land to protect them from seasonal flooding, demonstrating a keen understanding of hydrology and topography. Some roads were reinforced with wooden palisades or stone foundations, while ditches alongside them managed drainage. Straight alignments and geometric precision indicate intentional planning, possibly guided by social, ceremonial, or astronomical considerations. The effort required for such construction implies organized labor and centralized coordination, reflecting a complex social structure capable of mobilizing resources on a scale previously unimagined for Amazonian societies. The roads were more than mere transportation routes, they were expressions of civilization itself. Alongside these pathways, archaeologists have found signs of settlements, ceremonial spaces, and agricultural zones, indicating that travel was integrated with both practical and cultural life. Villagers could journey to marketplaces, participate in festivals, or attend councils without disrupting the ecological balance. These roads also facilitated communication, reinforcing networks of governance and social cohesion across regions. The civilization that built them understood the importance of connectivity, foresight, and sustainable design, ensuring that their society could thrive despite the challenges of the rainforest. Evidence suggests that these roads were intentionally concealed or partially hidden over time, perhaps as the forest reclaimed abandoned settlements. Trees grew over paths, vines curled across embankments, and leaf litter masked precise alignments. The Amazon has a way of absorbing human achievement, but the underlying structure often remains detectable to those who know where and how to look. LiDAR technology, which penetrates dense vegetation with laser scanning, has been revolutionary in revealing the true extent of these networks. Suddenly, what appeared to be random forest becomes a map of human ingenuity, showcasing thousands of kilometers of interlinked settlements and plazas, meticulously planned and executed. These roads reflect not only technical skill but also strategic thinking. Elevated pathways allowed year-round travel, unaffected by seasonal rains or river flooding. They connected food production areas to population centers, facilitated trade, and enabled rapid mobilization during emergencies or conflicts. The very act of building and maintaining these roads required long-term planning, social organization, and a profound understanding of the landscape. They demonstrate that the Amazonian city builders were not passive inhabitants of the forest but active engineers, capable of transforming their environment into a functional, interconnected civilization. Consider the social implications. These roads enabled cohesion among large populations spread across challenging terrain. They allowed religious leaders, artisans, and farmers to move freely, reinforcing shared culture and governance. Festivals could draw participants from distant settlements. Knowledge of agricultural practices, medicinal plants, and spiritual traditions could travel along these routes, preserving and disseminating vital information. Without such infrastructure, the Amazonian civilization could not have supported the scale and complexity that archaeological evidence now suggests. The existence of these roads also challenges the myth that Amazonian societies were isolated and scattered. Instead, they reveal a civilization that was organized, collaborative, and dynamic. Social networks stretched across rivers, forests, and floodplains, linking communities through physical infrastructure as well as cultural ties. Roads were the veins of the empire, pumping life into every settlement, ensuring continuity, and fostering a shared identity that survived even as the forest slowly reclaimed many of its traces. Walking along one of these hidden pathways today, one can almost imagine the bustle of life. Children running alongside carts of food, elders heading to ceremonies, traders moving goods between settlements, and artisans carrying tools to distant workshops. These roads were the circulatory system of a lost empire, a testament to human ingenuity that harmonized with the rhythms of the rainforest rather than opposing them. They remind us that sophistication does not always require stone or steel. Sometimes it exists quietly, enduring in patterns beneath the canopy, waiting for discovery. The roads of the Lost Empire reveal a civilization that combined vision, engineering, and environmental intelligence. They were practical, sustainable, and socially integrative, reflecting a society that understood both the needs of its people and the intricacies of the forest. In these pathways, the Amazon speaks of human achievement hidden beneath layers of green, a civilization whose brilliance endured not through monuments of stone, but through careful planning, foresight, and the quiet power of connection. In the heart of the Amazonian settlements, open spaces emerged that were far more than mere clearings in the forest. These were plazas, carefully designed, geometric, and central to the social, political, and spiritual life of the communities. Far from random, their placement reflected deliberate planning, often aligned with rivers, roads, or celestial markers. These plazas served as gathering points, marketplaces, ceremonial arenas, and political stages. They were the beating hearts of the cities, spaces where culture, governance, and religion converged. To stand in one today is to feel the echoes of thousands of voices that once animated these spaces, voices that the forest has not fully silenced but has carefully layered into its living tapestry. Archaeological evidence suggests that many of these plazas were circular or rectangular, sometimes bordered by mounds or terraces, elevating them above seasonal floodwaters. Their size varied, from small communal gathering spaces to massive arenas capable of hosting thousands. In these plazas, ceremonies likely unfolded: dances, rituals, festivals, and political councils. Such spaces were essential for social cohesion, allowing distant settlements connected by the roads to converge and reinforce communal identity. The Amazonian city builders understood that the physical organization of space could influence social behavior, uniting communities through shared experience while integrating the natural landscape into daily life. The geometric precision of these plazas indicates sophisticated planning. Straight edges, symmetrical layouts, and proportional alignments suggest more than functional intent. They reflect a worldview in which mathematics, aesthetics, and spiritual principles intertwined. Some plazas appear to align with the rising and setting of the sun at solstices, while others correspond with river courses or prevailing winds, demonstrating an awareness of environmental factors in design. These were spaces where human presence harmonized with nature, where ceremonial practice and ecological intelligence coexisted in remarkable balance. Plazas were not merely ceremonial, they were hubs of economy and communication. Markets likely sprung up in these open spaces, enabling trade in food, tools, textiles, and ceremonial items. Artisans and craftspeople could display their work, and knowledge could be exchanged across communities. These gatherings reinforced social hierarchies, distributed resources, and created networks that extended across the city and beyond. They allowed for governance to be exercised visibly, a physical manifestation of civic structure that connected the population while maintaining order. The surrounding architecture further underscores the importance of these plazas. Raised mounds, temples, and dwellings were oriented toward these central spaces, emphasizing their prominence. Some mounds likely served as platforms for religious leaders or rulers, elevating them physically and symbolically above the people. These structures suggest a complex social hierarchy, where ceremony, governance, and spirituality were intertwined and visible to all. The plazas, in essence, were theaters in which society performed its rituals, exercised its authority, and celebrated its collective identity. Even today, these spaces retain their silent power. From aerial views or lidar scans, their outlines emerge clearly, revealing precision that is impossible to attribute to chance. On the ground, the forest may have reclaimed them, covering terraces and mounds with vegetation, but the fundamental geometry persists, a subtle testament to human ingenuity. It is in these plazas that the sophistication of Amazonian civilization becomes most evident, a society capable of integrating urban planning, social structure, and environmental harmony into spaces that were both functional and symbolic. Consider the cultural implications. Plazas likely played a role in unifying large populations spread across diverse terrains. Seasonal festivals, religious ceremonies, and political councils would draw participants from distant settlements, strengthening identity and cooperation. These spaces were theaters of communication, allowing leaders to address the community, healers to share knowledge, and traders to coordinate exchange. They reinforced the interconnectedness of the society, linking spiritual, civic, and economic functions in a single, carefully designed environment. The design of plazas also demonstrates a nuanced understanding of social psychology. Large, open spaces invite participation, encourage visibility, and create a sense of collective presence. Raised platforms or mounds assert authority without coercion, enabling leaders to guide and observe while maintaining community engagement. Ceremonial alignment with natural features, such as rivers, hills, or celestial phenomena, reinforced cultural narratives and spiritual beliefs, embedding cosmology into everyday life. In these plazas, architecture and ritual intertwined to sustain social order and identity. The plazas of the Amazon are, in many ways, the most telling evidence of the civilization's sophistication. While the forest can reclaim wooden structures or erase minor earthworks, the deliberate placement, geometry, and scale of these open spaces resist complete obliteration. They endure as markers of societal intent, inviting modern observers to reconstruct the rhythms, values, and aspirations of the people who built them. Through these plazas, we glimpse the heartbeat of cities once thought impossible, a civilization whose genius lay not only in survival, but in creating spaces that elevated human life within the vast, living tapestry of the rainforest. Standing in a cleared plaza today, one can almost hear the hum of human activity, the chants of ritual leaders, the laughter of children, the clatter of artisans' tools, and the murmur of marketplaces. These spaces were more than functional, they were living expressions of cultural identity, carefully calibrated to integrate human needs with environmental realities. In understanding the plazas of the Amazon, we begin to appreciate the depth of planning, social cohesion, and ecological intelligence that characterize this lost civilization, reminding us that human brilliance can flourish even in the most challenging and seemingly wild landscapes. Amid the dense foliage of the Amazon, remnants of raised earthworks, mounds and ceremonial platforms emerge like silent witnesses to a forgotten civilization. At first glance, these formations might seem natural, mere hills shaped by erosion or centuries of sediment accumulation. But careful study reveals something extraordinary. These mounds were deliberately constructed, their scale, alignment, and design indicating purpose, sophistication, and cultural meaning. Some rise several meters above the forest floor, large enough to support communal structures, temples, or ceremonial spaces. Others are arranged in geometric patterns, forming circles, squares, and concentric layouts that reflect an advanced understanding of spatial planning and symbolic representation. In essence, these mounds were both functional and spiritual, serving as monuments of memory in a landscape where wood and earth were the primary building materials. Constructing these mounds required immense labor and coordination. Workers moved tons of soil, shaping it into terraces, platforms, and embankments that could withstand the heavy rains and seasonal floods of the rainforest. The sheer scale of these projects suggests organized labor, social hierarchy, and leadership capable of mobilizing communities over extended periods. Unlike European stone monuments, which rely on permanence, Amazonian mounds were designed in harmony with the environment. They elevated buildings and ceremonial spaces while integrating into the contours of the land. They demonstrate a civilization that prioritized utility, symbolism, and ecological balance simultaneously. Many mounds were ceremonial, serving as stages for religious rites, community gatherings, and political councils. Their prominence in the landscape ensured visibility, allowing leaders or spiritual figures to address large crowds. Alignments with rivers, roads, or celestial bodies suggest an awareness of astronomy and cosmology, embedding meaning into their spatial design. These structures were more than mere platforms, they were instruments of cultural cohesion, reinforcing identity, hierarchy, and shared values across dispersed settlements. The mounds, in this sense, were both practical and symbolic, a physical manifestation of the society's organization, beliefs, and connection to the environment. Mounds also played a critical role in agriculture and flood management. Elevated terraces allowed for cultivation above floodplains, protecting crops from inundation while benefiting from nutrient-rich waters during seasonal rises. Some mounds incorporated drainage systems, canals, or retaining walls, demonstrating an advanced understanding of hydrology and engineering. This integration of architecture, ecology, and agriculture reflects a civilization that mastered both the physical and symbolic aspects of its environment. Life in these communities was deeply intertwined with the land, with mounds serving as anchors for social, spiritual, and practical activity. Monuments in the Amazon were rarely solitary. They were often arranged in complex networks, connected by roads and interspersed with plazas and habitations. These networks suggest that the civilization was not isolated but highly organized, capable of coordinating large-scale projects across hundreds of kilometers. Each mound was part of a greater system, a node in a network that linked religious, political, and economic functions. Their deliberate placement indicates an understanding of space, social dynamics, and environmental management, revealing a level of sophistication that rivals contemporary civilizations elsewhere in the world. Memory itself was embedded in these constructions. In a society reliant on wood, thatch, and earth, materials susceptible to decay, the mounds served as enduring markers. They recorded the presence, achievements, and beliefs of the people who built them. Where written language might have been scarce or absent, these monuments encoded knowledge, cultural narratives, and social organization into the landscape. Even after centuries of abandonment and forest reclamation, the contes of these earthworks survive, whispering stories of cities, ceremonies, and daily life that European observers long dismissed as impossible. Some mounds reveal evidence of ritual activity. Pottery shards, ceremonial objects, and remnants of fires suggest offerings, feasts, or symbolic gestures performed atop these platforms. Such practices indicate a culture deeply connected to spiritual and communal life, using architecture to express cosmology and reinforce societal norms. The Amazonian mounds, therefore, were not passive structures. They were active participants in culture, shaping human experience, guiding social interaction, and linking communities to the natural and spiritual worlds. The enduring presence of these monuments challenges the narrative that the Amazon was empty or primitive. Even as the forest reclaims the land, the mounds testify to the scale, complexity, and intelligence of the societies that constructed them. They are proof that architecture need not be carved from stone to endure, and that cultural memory can survive through form, pattern, and landscape integration. Each mound is a chapter in a story of resilience, ingenuity, and adaptation, an eloquent reminder that human civilizations can flourish in harmony with nature, leaving traces that whisper across centuries. Walking among these earthworks today, one senses the layers of history beneath the soil. The forest floor may conceal roads, plazas, and dwellings, but the mounds rise as persistent markers of human presence and achievement. They speak of a civilization that understood the impermanence of wood yet sought permanence through design, alignment, and collective effort. In this way, the Amazon's mounds are more than archaeological features. They are symbols of memory, endurance, and the subtle grandeur of a people whose achievements were both extraordinary and intricately woven into the living forest. The mounds, monuments, and memory of the Amazonian civilization remind us that human creativity can thrive even in the most challenging environments. They are silent teachers, revealing the power of planning, social coordination, and ecological intelligence. In the quiet, elevated spaces of these earthworks, we glimpse the spirit of a lost empire, one that shaped the land, built communities, and left enduring marks that challenge our understanding of history. The forest may cover them, but the mounds endure, whispering the story of civilizations that were never truly lost, only waiting to be recognized. The Amazonian civilization was far more than a collection of isolated settlements. It was a network of communities bound by trade, communication, and shared cultural practices. Roads, plazas, and waterways connected villages across vast distances, creating a system that facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and knowledge. Pottery, tools, ornaments, and foodstuffs flowed along these networks, linking distant regions in an intricate web of commerce. This trade was not merely economic, it was cultural. Through these exchanges, communities reinforced social bonds, shared spiritual practices, and transmitted innovations in agriculture, architecture, and governance. The Amazonian cities were not islands in the forest, they were nodes in a sophisticated, interconnected civilization, whose reach extended far beyond what early explorers could imagine. Archaeological discoveries reveal that these networks were remarkably complex. Artifacts from distant regions, including specialized pottery and ornamental items, have been found hundreds of kilometers from their origin. Such findings suggest intentional trade and the presence of skilled artisans whose work held both practical and symbolic significance. Exchange routes enabled communities to access resources that were unavailable locally, from exotic plants and seeds to tools and raw materials, demonstrating both economic acumen and social foresight. The movement of goods also implied the movement of people, knowledge, and cultural practices, reinforcing cohesion across vast and challenging terrains. Knowledge transfer was a cornerstone of this system. Agricultural techniques, such as the creation and maintenance of terra preta, were shared among communities, ensuring that food production could sustain large populations. Understanding of seasonal cycles, river behavior, and ecological patterns was communicated across generations and regions. Skilled individuals, farmers, artisans, and spiritual leaders traveled along roads and waterways, spreading expertise and wisdom that strengthened the civilization as a whole. In this sense, trade was not only about material wealth, it was about sustaining life, knowledge, and cultural continuity. Religious and ceremonial practices were also intertwined with these networks. Festivals and rituals drew participants from multiple settlements, reinforcing shared beliefs and social hierarchies. Plazas, roads, and mounds acted as stages and conduits for these events, ensuring that distant communities remained culturally connected. Knowledge of celestial patterns, spiritual traditions, and ritual techniques likely traveled alongside physical goods, creating a shared cultural fabric that transcended geography. This integration of trade, ceremony, and governance reflects a civilization that understood the necessity of cohesion and communication for societal resilience. The sophistication of these networks demonstrates strategic planning and social organization. Coordinating trade across rivers, forests, and floodplains required knowledge of logistics, resource management, and environmental conditions. Road construction, river navigation, and storage facilities were critical to ensuring that goods and people moved efficiently. Centralized coordination, perhaps through councils or leadership figures, would have been necessary to maintain these systems, reflecting a complex political structure capable of supporting dense populations. The civilization's success depended not merely on local ingenuity but on the collective intelligence and cooperation of multiple communities across the Amazon. Trade networks also facilitated innovation. Techniques in agriculture, metallurgy, pottery, and textile production could spread rapidly, enabling communities to adapt and thrive in diverse environments. Shared knowledge reduced redundancy and increased efficiency, allowing the civilization to expand while maintaining ecological balance. This dynamic exchange underscores that the Amazonian cities were not static; they evolved, learned, and improved collectively, demonstrating adaptability and foresight. In many ways, these networks were the backbone of the civilization, enabling both survival and cultural flourishing in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Cultural cohesion extended beyond trade. Shared rituals, art forms, and architectural styles created a sense of unity among dispersed communities. Symbols, motifs, and design elements repeated across the region indicate common beliefs and aesthetic values, strengthening identity across distances. Even as settlements were separated by hundreds of kilometers, a shared cultural language persisted, maintained through the movement of people, goods, and ideas. In this way, the civilization achieved continuity, ensuring that knowledge, values, and traditions endured despite environmental and temporal challenges. The presence of these networks challenges historical assumptions that the Amazon was isolated and primitive. Instead, it reveals a civilization that was dynamic, interconnected, and intellectually sophisticated. The trade routes and communication systems enabled not only economic exchange but also social cohesion, knowledge transfer, and cultural continuity. Communities relied on one another, reinforcing interdependence, resilience, and shared identity. The Amazonian civilization was not a series of disconnected villages; it was a coherent society, capable of sustaining large populations and complex social structures through carefully maintained networks. Even today, traces of these networks persist in subtle ways. LiDAR scans reveal the alignments of ancient roads and terraces, the footprints of plazas and ceremonial spaces, and the remnants of infrastructure designed to facilitate movement and exchange. Archaeologists can map these patterns to reconstruct the scale and sophistication of trade and cultural connections, uncovering a civilization far more advanced than early explorers or scholars ever imagined. Each artifact, each pathway, and each subtle alignment tells a story of cooperation, ingenuity, and strategic foresight. The Amazonian networks of trade, knowledge, and culture remind us that civilization is not merely defined by monumental architecture or written records. It can thrive through connection, cooperation, and shared understanding. Roads and rivers were as vital as plazas and mounds, enabling communities to flourish together, transferring resources, wisdom, and traditions across immense distances. In these networks, we witness the lifeblood of a lost empire, a civilization whose intelligence, foresight, and cultural richness endure quietly beneath the canopy, waiting to be recognized and understood by the modern world. In understanding these networks, we gain profound insight into the Amazonian worldview, that human life, knowledge, and culture can be nurtured in harmony with the environment, that connection sustains civilization, and that the legacy of a people is carried not only in monuments but in the invisible threads that bind communities across space and time. The roads, waterways, and trade routes of the Amazon were more than infrastructure. They were the veins of a living, breathing civilization, one whose ingenuity and cultural richness continue to inspire centuries after the forest reclaimed much of its visible presence. Beneath the thick canopy of the Amazon lies a repository of human ingenuity that history almost forgot. For centuries, explorers, missionaries, and scholars assumed that the rainforest was an empty wilderness, incapable of supporting large, organized societies. The remnants of roads, plazas, mounds, and cultivated forests were dismissed as natural anomalies or minor traces of small tribes. Yet modern science is revealing a different story, a civilization of remarkable sophistication, whose knowledge spanned agriculture, architecture, hydrology, ecology, and social organization. This was a culture that understood the rainforest not as an obstacle but as a partner, shaping it carefully to sustain life, community, and spiritual expression. Their understanding was subtle, integrated, and profound, knowledge that nearly vanished because it was hidden within living, decaying, and growing systems rather than carved in stone. One of the most astonishing aspects of this knowledge is their mastery of the soil. Terra preta, the engineered black earth, is not a product of chance. It reflects deliberate experimentation, planning, and ecological understanding. By incorporating charcoal, organic matter, and nutrients into the soil, Amazonian engineers created a medium capable of sustaining intensive agriculture over centuries. This was not only a technical achievement but an ecological philosophy, demonstrating that human societies could enhance, rather than deplete, their environment. The creation of Terra preta shows foresight, experimentation, and a sophisticated grasp of long-term sustainability, concepts that modern agriculture is only now beginning to fully appreciate. Water management also exemplifies their genius. Rivers, streams, and floodplains were integrated into city planning and agricultural systems, with raised terraces, embankments, and channels controlling seasonal inundations. This ensured reliable food production, protected settlements from destruction, and maintained the fertility of the land. The Amazonian city builders were not passive observers of their environment. They actively studied it, predicting seasonal patterns, flood behavior, and soil responses to human intervention. Their knowledge was empirical, accumulated over generations, and refined into systems that allowed large populations to thrive in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. The integration of ecology, agriculture, and urban planning was matched by sophisticated social and cultural knowledge. Plazas, mounds, and roads reflect not only engineering skill but also understanding of social dynamics, governance, and ritual significance. Communities were interconnected, sharing knowledge, trade, and cultural practices across vast distances. Ceremonies, markets, and festivals reinforced cohesion, creating networks of shared identity and expertise. Knowledge was not confined to individuals. It was distributed across communities, embedded in the landscape, and encoded in practices, rituals, and spatial organization. The Amazonian civilization understood that knowledge must be practical, communal, and interwoven with daily life to endure. Even spiritual and cosmological understanding was embedded in their design. Some plazas and mounds align with the movement of the sun, stars, or rivers, indicating an awareness of astronomy and natural cycles. This knowledge was not abstract. It guided agriculture, ritual timing, and social coordination. By integrating environmental observation with cultural and spiritual practice, Amazonian communities achieved a form of intelligence that was holistic, practical, and sustainable. Their civilization demonstrates that knowledge is most enduring when it is applied to sustain both society and the environment, creating systems that can persist through centuries without formal documentation. The forest itself became a living archive of this knowledge. Trees, plant species, and soil patterns recorded centuries of human intervention, silently preserving insights that were nearly lost to time. Modern archaeologists, ecologists, and anthropologists are only now beginning to read these signals, uncovering the extent of the civilization's achievements. Roads, terraces, orchards, and plazas emerge through lidar and satellite imagery, revealing networks of ingenuity that challenge the notion of an untouched Amazon. Knowledge that once seemed lost is rediscovered in the patterns of life that continue to flourish today. Yet much of this knowledge remains hidden, intangible, and fragile. The forest erases, reclaims, and transforms human creations, reminding us that understanding the Amazon requires patience, attention, and humility. The wisdom embedded in its soils, waterways, and plantings is subtle, accessible only to those willing to study the landscape carefully. This hidden intelligence challenges our assumptions about civilization, sustainability, and the capacity of human societies to thrive without domination. The Amazonian city-builders achieved greatness not by imposing permanence but by creating harmony, embedding resilience into their environment, and leaving lessons that endure in soil, stone, and living trees. The Amazonian civilization also underscores the value of subtlety, patience, and observation. Unlike civilizations that relied on monumental stone constructions, the city-builders used wood, earth, and living systems. Much of their work became invisible over centuries, yet it endured in soil fertility, species distribution, and spatial patterns. Their success relied on observation, experimentation, and long-term thinking rather than force or immediate visibility. For the modern world, this principle is crucial. Impactful solutions often require patience, adaptation, and a deep understanding of complex systems rather than quick, superficial interventions. Rediscovery of their achievements reminds us of humility and curiosity. For centuries, assumptions about the Amazon being empty or primitive ignored subtle but profound evidence of human ingenuity. Only through careful study and modern technology has this hidden intelligence been revealed. This teaches a broader lesson. The world contains layers of knowledge waiting to be discovered, if approached with respect, patience, and critical observation. Modern society can learn to question assumptions, embrace complexity, and seek wisdom in places that might initially seem barren or inscrutable. Perhaps the most powerful lesson is that humans can coexist sustainably with the environment. The Amazonian city-builders thrived in one of the most challenging ecosystems on Earth because they respected and collaborated with it. Their legacy is a model for sustainable urban planning, agriculture, and ecological stewardship. In an era of climate crisis, deforestation, and resource depletion, their example is profoundly relevant. True resilience comes not from dominating nature, but from understanding, integrating, and harmonizing with it. The forest itself, long thought wild and untouched, reveals the enduring impact of human intelligence. Roads, mounds, and cultivated orchards continue to shape ecosystems subtly, demonstrating that civilization can leave legacies that benefit both people and nature. Modern urban and agricultural planners, ecologists, and policymakers can draw inspiration from this model, blending innovation with ecological awareness. The Amazon teaches that the greatest human achievements are those that create lasting, positive interaction with the world, leaving systems that endure quietly across generations. Finally, the Amazonian civilization invites reflection on the meaning of legacy. Stone monuments, inscriptions, and urban sprawl are not the only markers of human achievement. Knowledge embedded in living systems, ecological balance, and subtle planning can endure in ways more profound and resilient than overt displays of power. The city builders' wisdom continues to nourish life, support biodiversity, and inspire discovery centuries after their disappearance. Their story reminds us that civilization's true measure is not in conquest or monumentality, but in the intelligence, foresight, and harmony it leaves behind. The rediscovery of this knowledge has profound implications for modern science, agriculture, and environmental management. It suggests that humans can design systems that sustain large populations while maintaining ecological balance. It provides insights into soil fertility, forest management, and water control that could inform sustainable practices today. More importantly, it expands our understanding of what civilization can be: adaptive, integrated, and invisible to the untrained eye. The Amazonian wisdom was nearly buried, yet its legacy remains, waiting for those who are ready to listen, observe, and learn. The forgotten knowledge of the Amazon reminds us that history is more complex than the written record suggests. Civilization is not defined solely by stone, metal, or inscriptions. It can thrive through subtlety, integration, and ecological intelligence. The Amazonian people mastered living in harmony with one of the most challenging landscapes on Earth, leaving behind lessons encoded in soil, vegetation, and spatial patterns. Their legacy is a reminder that human brilliance is not always loud or permanent. It is often quiet, patient, and interwoven with the natural world, waiting to be rediscovered by those who seek it with care and curiosity. In embracing this understanding, we begin to see the Amazon not as an untamed wilderness but as a testament to human adaptability, ingenuity, and foresight. Its hidden knowledge, patiently preserved for centuries, challenges modern assumptions and inspires awe. The civilization that once flourished here did so through observation, experimentation, and harmony, leaving a legacy that transcends visible structures. The lessons of the Amazon are profound: that intelligence can be subtle, sustainability can be beautiful, and human achievement can endure quietly within the rhythms of the natural world, waiting for discovery. Despite the ingenuity, scale, and sophistication of the Amazonian civilization, much of it vanished from the historical record, leaving behind subtle traces buried beneath the canopy. For centuries, explorers and scholars assumed the rainforest was an untouched wilderness, incapable of supporting large populations. The truth, however, is far more complex. Environmental changes, disease, social upheaval, and possibly conflicts with neighboring groups contributed to the gradual decline of these settlements. Unlike civilizations that collapsed under conquest or internal strife, the Amazonian city builders disappeared quietly, leaving no stone fortresses or written records to mark their existence. Instead, their cities, roads, and plazas were slowly reclaimed by the forest, merging human achievement back into the rhythms of the natural world. Seasonal floods, soil erosion, and shifting river courses gradually disrupted the delicate balance upon which these societies depended. Raised terraces and embankments, once carefully engineered to manage water flow, were overwhelmed by nature over centuries. Agricultural plots, including the famed terra preta, continued to support life for a time, but as population centers declined, maintenance of these systems waned. Orchards and managed forests, once meticulously tended, reverted to wild growth, blending with the surrounding rainforest. The very environment that had been nurtured to sustain civilization gradually reclaimed its autonomy, erasing visible evidence while leaving subtle ecological signatures. Disease played a role in accelerating societal decline. Historical parallels suggest that the introduction of pathogens, either through limited contact with outsiders or through natural epidemics, could have devastated populations already reliant on complex networks of agriculture and trade. As communities dwindled, knowledge transmission weakened, leaving survivors ill-equipped to maintain infrastructure or cultural practices. The collapse was not sudden but cumulative, a slow fading of human presence as the forest quietly reasserted itself. The Amazon became a vast tapestry where the accomplishments of civilization were hidden beneath leaves, vines, and soil, waiting to be rediscovered centuries later. Social and political factors may have also contributed. The complexity of interconnected settlements, while a strength in times of stability, could become a vulnerability if coordination failed. Roads, trade networks, and ceremonial centers required oversight, cooperation, and labor. As populations declined, or if leadership structures faltered, these networks would falter as well, leading to fragmentation. Communities that had once thrived in harmony with the forest may have dispersed, leaving plazas empty, mounds untended, and roads overgrown. The disappearance of visible structures does not indicate the absence of achievement. Rather, it highlights the delicate balance between human societies and their environments. Yet, even in disappearance, the legacy of these civilizations endured. The forest retains the imprint of human activity in ways that are subtle but profound. Species distribution, soil composition, and patterns of waterways all reflect centuries of human intervention. Orchards and useful plants remain, thriving in patterns that suggest deliberate planting. Mounds, terraces, and geometric earthworks persist, sometimes only detectable through aerial imaging or LiDAR technology. The environment itself became a living archive, preserving the ingenuity of a civilization that no longer walks among the trees but whose influence endures invisibly in the landscape. The forest's reclamation also serves as a testament to resilience and adaptability, both human and ecological. While the cities and roads were overtaken by vegetation, the systems they built had already altered the forest in ways that continued to support life. Terra preta remained fertile, waterways maintained a subtle balance, and orchards still produced fruit. In a sense, the civilization transformed the environment permanently, even as its social structures disappeared. Their ingenuity was absorbed into the forest, creating a hybrid landscape where human design and natural processes coexisted over centuries. The gradual disappearance of the Amazonian civilization highlights the impermanence of human endeavors in comparison to the natural world. Unlike stone monuments in arid regions that endure for millennia, the soft earth, wood, and organic architecture of the Amazon was vulnerable to decay. Yet this impermanence does not diminish their achievements, rather, it underscores their sophistication. They mastered living in rhythm with a challenging environment, creating systems that sustained large populations, integrated ecological knowledge, and harmonized with natural cycles. Their disappearance reminds us that human ingenuity is not always about dominance or permanence, but about adaptation, intelligence, and balance. Modern technology has allowed us to rediscover these lost civilizations, revealing networks of roads, mounds, and plazas once invisible beneath dense foliage. Satellite imaging, LiDAR, and archaeological investigation have uncovered evidence that challenges long-held assumptions, rewriting the history of the Amazon. What was thought to be untouched wilderness is now recognized as a landscape profoundly shaped by human hands, a testament to skill, foresight, and ecological intelligence. The disappearance of visible civilization does not equate to failure. Rather, it demonstrates a subtle, enduring influence woven into the forest itself. Understanding the collapse and disappearance of the Amazonian civilization provides lessons in resilience, humility, and ecological harmony. Human societies may rise and fall, but their interaction with the environment can leave lasting impacts, shaping ecosystems for centuries. The forest reclaimed much, yet it also preserved knowledge, infrastructure, and biological diversity, testifying to a civilization that was simultaneously ephemeral and enduring. This duality, the transience of human presence and the permanence of ecological influence, defines the Amazonian legacy. The story of collapse and reclamation also emphasizes the delicate balance required for sustaining complex societies in challenging environments. It reminds us that intelligence, engineering, and culture must coexist with natural processes, not oppose them. The disappearance of cities, roads, and plazas beneath the forest canopy is not an erasure of achievement, it is a transformation, a merging of human ingenuity with the enduring rhythms of the Amazon. In understanding this, we gain insight into both the fragility and resilience of civilization, and into the quiet, profound ways human knowledge can persist even when societies vanish from view. The Amazonian civilization may have faded from memory, but its echoes remain. The forest is both tomb and archive, concealing and preserving the traces of a society that mastered harmony with one of the most challenging landscapes on Earth. Roads, mounds, and terraces whisper of intelligence, cooperation, and foresight. Orchards and fertile soils continue to support life, a living testament to ecological wisdom. In Disappearance, the civilization teaches us that true achievement is not always visible, monumental, or permanent. It can endure subtly, invisibly, and profoundly, woven into the living world in ways that survive centuries of forest reclamation. For centuries, the Amazonian civilization remained hidden in plain sight. European explorers, missionaries, and later colonial scholars largely ignored or misunderstood the remnants of human achievement scattered across the rainforest. Dense vegetation, seasonal flooding, and the ephemeral nature of wood and earth structures concealed the vast networks of roads, plazas, mounds, and orchards from casual observation. It was only with the advent of modern technology, particularly aerial imaging and LiDAR, that the true extent of this lost civilization began to emerge. These tools pierced the forest canopy, revealing geometric patterns, engineered landscapes, and infrastructure that had lain invisible for centuries. Suddenly, the Amazon transformed from a presumed untouched wilderness into a meticulously planned and densely populated cultural landscape, challenging long-held assumptions about human history in the region. LiDAR, light detection and ranging, technology has been revolutionary in this rediscovery. By emitting laser pulses that penetrate foliage, LiDAR can map the forest floor in exquisite detail, uncovering hidden roads, mounds, terraces, and other earthworks. Entire city layouts, previously obscured, have been revealed, showing networks of settlements connected by roads, plazas, and canals. Archaeologists and ecologists now see evidence of sophisticated urban planning, land management, and ecological engineering that rivals the best-known civilizations of the ancient world. The scale is staggering. Tens of thousands of kilometers of infrastructure orchestrated across rivers, floodplains, and dense rainforest suggest a civilization of unprecedented complexity. Rediscovery has also involved careful excavation, mapping, and analysis of soil, botanical remains, and artifacts. Terra Preta, for example, provides tangible evidence of centuries-long experimentation and deliberate soil enhancement. Botanical studies reveal orchards and deliberately cultivated species, showing that the forest itself was a product of human design as much as it was a natural ecosystem. Artifacts such as pottery, tools, and ornaments indicate long-distance trade and social complexity, while geometric earthworks confirm intentional urban planning. Every new discovery reshapes our understanding, transforming assumptions about the Amazon from emptiness and chaos to intelligence, foresight, and social organization. The implications of this rediscovery extend beyond archaeology. Understanding how the Amazonian civilization engineered fertile soils, managed water, and cultivated forests has direct relevance for modern agriculture, environmental management, and sustainability. Insights into terra preta, polyculture planting, and flood-adapted urban planning may offer solutions to contemporary challenges in food production, ecosystem management, and climate resilience. By studying how these ancient communities thrived without degrading their environment, scientists gain lessons in long-term ecological stewardship, demonstrating that human innovation can exist in harmony with nature, not in opposition to it. Cultural rediscovery has been equally profound. Patterns in plazas, mounds, and ceremonial structures reveal social and spiritual practices, offering glimpses into governance, hierarchy, and belief systems. Archaeologists have begun to reconstruct the rhythms of community life. Seasonal festivals, trade gatherings, religious ceremonies, and civic councils, all organized along the axes of carefully designed urban layouts. Roads and plazas facilitated communication and cohesion, showing that these were not isolated villages but interconnected societies capable of sustaining dense populations over centuries. The civilization's intellectual and cultural achievements are now recognized as far more sophisticated than previously imagined. The process of rediscovery also challenges entrenched narratives about human-environment interaction. For centuries, the Amazon was seen as too hostile or infertile to support complex societies. This perception ignored the evidence encoded in the land itself. Modern science now demonstrates that the Amazonian people transformed the environment thoughtfully, creating fertile soils, cultivating forests, and designing settlements resilient to floods and ecological fluctuations. The forest was both partner and archive, preserving knowledge in subtle patterns that required patient observation and advanced technology to decode. Rediscovery is thus not only about mapping structures but about understanding intelligence embedded in the landscape over generations. Every LiDAR scan, soil analysis, and archaeological excavation is a dialogue across time. By interpreting patterns in earthworks, canals, and orchards, scientists reconstruct decisions, innovations, and social structures of a civilization long gone. Rediscovery brings a sense of awe. Despite centuries of obscurity, the ingenuity of the Amazonian citybuilders speaks clearly through the land. Roads, mounds, plazas, and fertile soils are not just remnants. They are testimonies of human creativity, resilience, and ecological intelligence, offering lessons that remain relevant today. Rediscovery also transforms cultural heritage and identity. Local communities, indigenous knowledge holders, and scientists collectively reinterpret the rainforest as a living archive of human achievement. This challenges narratives that portray the Amazon as untouched or empty, recognizing instead a landscape shaped by centuries of human innovation and stewardship. The civilization's legacy becomes both scientific and cultural, offering a broader understanding of human potential to adapt, innovate, and coexist with challenging environments. In essence, the eyes of modern science have restored visibility to what was long invisible. The Amazon is now recognized as a landscape of intelligence, adaptation, and deliberate design, rather than randomness and chaos. Roads, mounds, plazas, and terra preta are testimonies to planning, cooperation, and ingenuity, preserved subtly beneath the forest canopy. Rediscovery allows us to grasp not only the scale of this civilization but the depth of its wisdom, that humans can live, thrive, and innovate in harmony with their environment, leaving behind legacies that endure invisibly, quietly, and profoundly across centuries. The story of rediscovery reminds us that history is not always written in stone or text. It can survive in soil, vegetation, and spatial patterns, waiting for careful eyes and patient study. As modern science continues to uncover these hidden truths, the Amazonian civilization emerges not as a shadowy footnote, but as a profound example of human ingenuity, resilience, and foresight. In seeing the forest anew, we begin to understand a society that mastered complexity, integrated ecological knowledge, and left an enduring legacy hidden in plain sight, waiting to inspire and inform generations to come. The Amazonian civilization, long hidden beneath the rainforest canopy, offers lessons that resonate far beyond archaeology or history. Their achievements, roads, plazas, mounds, terra preta, orchards, and carefully managed waterways, demonstrate that complex societies can thrive in harmony with nature. Modern civilizations often assume that progress requires domination over the environment, yet the Amazonian citybuilders succeeded precisely because they collaborated with it. They mastered sustainable agriculture, ecological engineering, and urban planning in a way that modern societies are only beginning to understand. Every road, mound, and fertile plot serves as a reminder that intelligence, foresight, and respect for natural systems are timeless principles, essential not only for survival but for prosperity. One of the clearest lessons lies in soil management. Terra preta, the engineered black earth, reveals that humans can enhance ecosystems without degrading them. By carefully combining charcoal, organic matter, and nutrients, the Amazonian people created soil capable of sustaining intensive agriculture for centuries. Modern agricultural practices, often extractive and unsustainable, could benefit enormously from understanding and applying these principles. Their approach demonstrates that productivity and ecological health need not be mutually exclusive and that long-term planning yields benefits far beyond immediate gain. Water management offers another enduring insight. The Amazonian civilization constructed raised terraces, canals, and drainage systems to control seasonal floods, protect crops, and maintain fertile land. They understood hydrology intuitively and applied that knowledge to urban and agricultural planning. Modern societies, grappling with climate change, extreme weather, and flood management, can draw inspiration from these strategies. The principle is clear: human settlements must adapt to the rhythms of nature rather than attempt to dominate or ignore them. Designing cities and agriculture in harmony with environmental cycles ensures resilience, efficiency, and sustainability. Equally important is the lesson in social organization and networks. The interconnectedness of roads, plazas, and trade routes shows that collaboration, communication, and shared knowledge were central to the Amazonian civilization's success. Their cities were not isolated, they relied on collective intelligence and cooperation. Modern societies, often fragmented and competitive, can learn from this model. Networks of shared resources, distributed knowledge, and interdependent communities strengthen resilience, foster innovation, and enhance the well-being of populations. The Amazon teaches that social cohesion is as vital as technological or environmental mastery. Cultural integration is another principle with enduring relevance. The Amazonian civilization merged practical, spiritual, and ceremonial life seamlessly. Plazas, mounds, and roads were not only functional, they were also imbued with cultural and symbolic significance. Knowledge, ritual, and governance were intertwined, ensuring that daily life reinforced identity, values, and continuity. Modern societies often separate culture, governance, and environment in ways that undermine cohesion. The Amazon demonstrates that integrating social, spiritual, and ecological systems creates societies that are resilient, adaptable, and enduring. The Amazonian civilization also underscores the value of subtlety, patience, and observation. Unlike civilizations that relied on monumental stone constructions, the city builders used wood, earth, and living systems. Much of their work became invisible over centuries, yet it endured in soil fertility, species distribution, and spatial patterns. Their success relied on observation, experimentation, and long-term thinking rather than force or immediate visibility. For the modern world, this principle is crucial. Impactful solutions often require patience, adaptation, and a deep understanding of complex systems rather than quick, superficial interventions. Rediscovery of their achievements reminds us of humility and curiosity. For centuries, assumptions about the Amazon being empty or primitive ignored subtle but profound evidence of human ingenuity. Only through careful study and modern technology has this hidden intelligence been revealed. This teaches a broader lesson. The world contains layers of knowledge waiting to be discovered, if approached with respect, patience, and critical observation. Modern society can learn to question assumptions, embrace complexity, and seek wisdom in places that might initially seem barren or inscrutable. Perhaps the most powerful lesson is that humans can coexist sustainably with the environment. The Amazonian city builders thrived in one of the most challenging ecosystems on Earth because they respected and collaborated with it. Their legacy is a model for sustainable urban planning, agriculture, and ecological stewardship. In an era of climate crisis, deforestation, and resource depletion, their example is profoundly relevant. True resilience comes not from dominating nature, but from understanding, integrating, and harmonizing with it. The forest itself, long thought wild and untouched, reveals the enduring impact of human intelligence. Roads, mounds, and cultivated orchards continue to shape ecosystems subtly, demonstrating that civilization can leave legacies that benefit both people and nature. Modern urban and agricultural planners, ecologists, and policymakers can draw inspiration from this model, blending innovation with ecological awareness. The Amazon teaches that the greatest human achievements are those that create lasting, positive interaction with the world, leaving systems that endure quietly across generations. Finally, the Amazonian civilization invites reflection on the meaning of legacy. Stone monuments, inscriptions, and urban sprawl are not the only markers of human achievement. Knowledge embedded in living systems, ecological balance, and subtle planning can endure in ways more profound and resilient than overt displays of power. The city builders' wisdom continues to nourish life, support biodiversity, and inspire discovery centuries after their disappearance. Their story reminds us that civilization's true measure is not in conquest or monumentality, but in the intelligence, foresight, and harmony it leaves behind. The lessons of the Amazon are timeless: respect nature, plan for the long term, collaborate across communities, integrate culture with practicality, and leave legacies that endure quietly yet profoundly. This lost civilization, once nearly buried by forest and history, now emerges as a beacon for the modern world, a testament to the possibility of sustainable, intelligent, and harmonious human life. Their story inspires awe, reflection, and hope, reminding us that even in the most challenging environments, human ingenuity guided by patience, observation, and respect can create a civilization whose impact resonates centuries later.